Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome class 10th in my lecture series for chemistry. In our today's lecture, we will start our new chapter, that is the biochemistry. The objectives for today's lecture include a short introduction of biochemistry, a short introduction of biomolecules, and then we will study that how these molecules produce and store energy and what are the types of biomolecules. This is the general introduction of the chapter 13. So let's start with the biochemistry. What is biochemistry? Biochemistry is the study of the chemical substances and the vital processes that are occurring within the living organisms. We know that the word bio means life and chemistry is related to all the chemical reactions. So this means that the study of all the chemical reactions that are occurring within the living organisms will be classified under the biochemistry. The biochemistry allows us to understand how the body works. For example, your body breaks down food and makes ATP, also called as adenosine triphosphate, for energy through chemistry. This breaking down of the biomolecules to produce this energy in the form of ATP is a chemical process and involves a chemical reaction. How the energy is stored within these biomolecules? We know that in all the green plants we have chloroplast, and within that chloroplast we have a pigment called as chlorophyll. Now this chlorophyll helps in absorbing the sunlight energy, and the plants in the presence of sunlight reacts with carbon dioxide and the water to form glucose. This process is also called as the photosynthesis. In the photosynthesis, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide reacts with 6 molecules of water molecule to form glucose and oxygen. Now, this glucose is a biomolecule. So this means that the energy used in the chloroplast is basically employed to create ordered energy-rich sugar molecules. And what is that energy-rich sugar molecule? That is the glucose. Now these sugars are available to plants to use for their own purposes. And when the animals eat these plants, then the sugars are also available to those animals. Animals use this sugar to produce their own energy currency through the mitochondria, and that energy currency is called as ATP. This ATP is the energy source for animal life processes. So this creation of ATP from sugar is also called as respiration. So in respiration, what happens that the glucose combines with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water along with the release of energy in the form of ATP. Now these living organisms use this energy to carry out different life processes. So the energy in these biomolecules is stored by the process of photosynthesis in the plants and is then harvested or used during the process of the cellular respiration in the animals. Now, since both of these reactions are occurring within the living organisms, so study of these processes comes under the discipline of biochemistry. Now let's discuss what are biomolecules. Life on Earth is based on carbon compounds that we call biomolecules, and biomolecules are the macromolecules or the giant molecules. Why they are called giant molecules? Because they are the polymers. And we know that these polymers are made up of smaller molecules called as monomers. These monomers are these blocks that when combined together results in the formation of larger molecules called as the polymers. The biomolecules are of four kinds. These are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and the nucleic acid. All of these biomolecules are made up of smaller units called monomers. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids are the kinds of the biomolecules that are present within the living organisms and have different functions. Let's study them one by one. Carbohydrates, as the name suggests, are the hydrates of carbon, and they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The monomers of carbohydrates are called as the monosaccharides. So this means that the carbohydrates are made up of monosaccharides. The main function of the carbohydrate is to provide energy, and they provide energy for daily activity. They provide energy to allow proper organ function, and they also provide the energy of life. So they are the most abundant kind of biomolecules, and they are the major source of energy for different animals to carry out their life processes. So where is carbohydrate found? There are different sugar sources. The sugar is also a carbohydrate. And for example, sucrose is an example of sugar, and it is found in the table sugar. Lactose is found in milk, and the fructose is found in the fruits. Food sources for the starchy carbohydrates are the bread, pasta, and cereal, etc. Now, the another kind of biomolecules is the lipids. Lipids, just like carbohydrates, are also the macromolecules. However, they have a different monomer. The monomer of lipids are called as the fatty acids. Function of lipids include the structural support for cell, energy storage, and cell signaling. Lipids are non-polar in nature, and they do not interact with water because we know that water is a polar substance. These are different kinds of lipids: triglycerides, phospholipids, and steroids. These triglycerides are also called as fats and oils, and they function as a food reserve in many organisms and can be an important source of energy. Fats are the energy reserves in the animals, and seeds of certain plants store appreciable amount of oils also. The phospholipids serve as a structural component of the cell membrane, and the steroid, that is a kind of lipid, can be a hormone as well as the membrane component. So if you look at the functions of these biomolecules, then you will know that how much importance they have in the living organisms. The difference between the carbohydrates and the lipids as an energy source is that carbohydrates are the immediate source of energy. However, lipids stores energy for a longer period of time as compared to the carbohydrates. Now let's discuss another kind of biomolecules, that is the proteins. These proteins are made up of amino acids. The monomer of the proteins are the amino acids. Proteins are the organic compound which contain amino acids by peptide linkage. They are composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. The monomer of the protein is the amino acids, and these amino acids contain amino group and the carboxyl groups. These proteins are important for the muscle development, as well as they also boost our immune system. Different antibodies are present in our body that makes our immune system, and these antibodies are generally proteins in nature. Similarly, enzymes that are present in our body are also proteins, and these enzymes are also serve as a catalyst for different biochemical reactions that are occurring within the bodies of living organisms. These enzymes are also proteins in nature. Similarly, we know that our DNA has the genetic information, and that information is present in the form of codes. These codes helps in the manufacturing of different kinds of proteins, and these genes are basically the codes for proteins that decides that what kind of proteins will be synthesized. Nucleic acid and nucleotide is another kind of biomolecules. These nucleic acids are made up of smaller units called as nucleotides. Nucleic acids are biopolymers or small biomolecules that are essential to all known forms of life. They are composed of nucleotides which are monomers. This means that the monomer of the nucleic acid are the nucleotides. Now these nucleotides are made up of three components: 5-carbon sugar, phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. If the sugar is a compound ribose, then the polymer is RNA. If the sugar is derived from ribose as deoxyribose, then the polymer is the DNA. So RNA and DNA are the nucleic acids. The function of the nucleic acid is that they contain genetic material, and the nucleic acids hold information that our body uses to make proteins. For example, this is our DNA. Now what happens that the messenger RNA copies the information present in one of the strand of the DNA, and then the transfer RNA reads the information on the messenger RNA and helps in linking of a different amino acid in a proper sequence to form a specific kind of proteins. So this was the importance of the nucleic acid in living organisms, and it helps to this process also helps to transmit the genetic information from parents to the offsprings. So these were some of the important biomolecules that are present within the living organisms and are important as they serve important functions in our body. We will discuss about these biomolecules in our upcoming lectures in detail one by one. So this was all for today. Thank you for being with me.